Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We saw yesterday as to how mind superimposes forms over existing objects, superimposes impressions of various types. The difference between a mud pot, which is acquired through knowledge, and a mind pot, which gets illuminated through the jiva. Now, Vedanta proceeds to take us to the next crucial step. Since it's the mind which creates the world for us the way we aspire, Vedanta says it is this mind which leads you to create bondage. And a bonded mind is a mind which is capable of enjoying pleasures and also suffering pain. And it cites an illustration. Father is in India and the son is elsewhere. Somebody gives a wrong information that his son is no more. What happens to his mind? The son is actually dead, but that information does not reach the father. How is his mind? Therefore, on the first count, a wrong information disturbs the mind of the father. And in the second count, the non-information does not disturb the equilibrium of the mind at that point of time. So, world gets created every second only through our mind. Now the objectionist poses a question. He says, are you admitting God created duality or not? Vedanta says, of course we admit. Otherwise, people who encouraged or sponsored the school of thought on voidity went on to say that this is all nothing but a sort of a vibration, sensations produced instantaneously and get dissolved. Therefore, are you accepting? He thought that he is going to conquer Vedanta. Are you accepting duality? The Vedanti answers, yes. God created duality does exist. Merely because we believe that it exists doesn't mean, the Vedanti puts that rider very clearly, doesn't mean that it is real or it is useful to oneself. Accepting a fact that it is present is different from accepting the fact it is real. Vedanta doesn't admit that this is real. Then the objectionist puts the next question. If you say that this external world is not real, all that you have to do is to only prevent the mind to get bonded. So arrest the mind. Is that not sufficient? Why should you know about Brahman? Why should you know about Satchidananda? Why should you do all this? Vedanta proceeds to answer the next step. He says, quieting the mind or eclipsing the mind gives only temporary relief. It doesn't give you a permanent solution. When Vedanta says we admit God created duality, why should we be preventing the mind in understanding the reality? It should perceive, understanding that duality. It should perceive the duality, but through an inquiry, arrive at a conclusion that it is not real. And if you want to reach the destination point that this God created duality is unreal, Jiva is unreal, it's not enough if you just prevent the mind from acquisition of information. More importantly, Vedanta says It is not easy to liquidate or dilute or make the God created duality vanish. It is impossible. The difference is this: God created duality is through the power of Maya, and Ishvara, the controller of Maya, exercises the power to create this God created duality. Whereas man created duality is illusions through one's own mind, which is a slave of Maya, and therefore this mind has no capacity to destroy the God created duality. So Vedanta says, don't hate the world, don't hate the universe, don't show disrespect or disregard to this God created duality, but always know the fact that it is something which needs to be conquered. And conquered not by destroying it, by destroying the formation of impressions, our superimpositions to the existing structure. That's why Vedanta repeatedly says somebody is a realized soul. She will continue to interact in this universe. But how? With a great sense of indifference. We would have loved the diamond, which we were discussing yesterday, with utmost attachment. Once realization dawns in one's mind, the same diamond will look like any other stone used to be one uses for throwing it at a dog, because both are stones. So this is the indifference which one should develop. Says bondage should be got over by indifference. Bondage should not be got over through hatred, through disregard, through disrespect. It should be got over by indifference. That's the essential fundamental principles of Vedanta. And therefore it says, respect the God created duality and use whatever is beneficial out of it. See, Vedas, Upanishads, then knowledge, Vedanta, Guru. Use all this which is available in God created duality and then progress from bondage to indifference. So the take home is never shun God created reality and don't think controlling mind is good enough. We don't have to know Vedanta, which is now the emerging trend in many places. They all say that you don't have to know anything. Conquer the mind, just quieten the mind. That's good for you. It's good for you for a temporary phase. It will not help you to reach our destination, namely reaching indifference, and therefore understanding that this duality is nothing but a myth, and in the process understanding the substratum to be nothing but Brahman, which is Satchidananda. Let's continue tomorrow. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We saw yesterday about the God created duality and how it cannot be destroyed or made to vanish. And all that one can do is not to get bonded. And therefore, the journey while dealing with God duality is transformation of bondage to indifference by slowly avoiding to put our impressions on God created dualities. Now, coming to the Jiva created duality, we create dualities. How do we handle it? This section deals with that. Jiva, every Jiva creates two sets of dualities. Something which is in consonance to the values prescribed by scriptures. We can call it as the do's. And dualities created which are prohibited or considered to be don'ts. So these are the two sets of dualities which every jiva continuously keeps producing and imposing it on the God created dualities. Now, how do we deal these two? One, when we deal with jiva creating dualities which is in consonance with the scriptures, Vedanta makes it very clear we cannot give up and we should not give up. We should utilize them for our practices. And Vedanta cites this as an example of a torch. Start of a journey, you keep walking, you need a torch. So use those dualities created by you, which is in consonance with scriptures, pursue them and use them until the journey gets over. The moment you reach the other destination, you don't require torch anymore. Therefore, give it up. So, we call it as the Shastric prescribed dualities. This is something which we need to pursue in life up to a point where we are about to get liberated. And we should not stick to it thereafter. Now, when it comes to the dualities which are prohibited and not to be practiced, what we call the don'ts, Vedanta says those dualities should be completely eradicated. So when it comes to God, show indifference and stop imposing. When it comes to jiva created dualities, which is in consonance with scriptures, pursue it like use it as a tool or a torch till the end of the journey and give it up. But when it comes to jiva producing dualities which are prohibited, Vedanta says that should be got over and destroyed. Because as long as they are there in us, we will be bonded. And bondage will allow the senses to keep perceiving more and more out of this universe. Feed it into the mind, and the mind will give more and more directions for the organs of actions to perform. So everything will remain outward. There is no time to do an inward thinking. So that section needs to be destroyed. And it says, may it be love, may it be anger, may it be greed, may it be jealous, may it be anything, positive or negative. In our view, it doesn't matter because all this is put into one basket. Something which needs to be disowned, given up, needs to be given up. This is very, very important. Now, there is a school which says there is what is wrong, what is the harm in continuing with good practices, noble practices, which creates more and more of punya. We're doing a lot of charity, doing a lot of religious work. They're all very good. Why don't you do it as much as you can? You have to do it till such time they enable you to get out of this duality. By constantly doing only this as a pursuit, there is a downside which Vedanta has pointed out very clearly. It says, sticking to, you think that by doing only punya you can avoid papa, you can't, technically. And assuming for a minute you will have only punya and therefore you can enjoy a heavenly life, so why should life be abandoned? Vedanta says, look at anyone who has such a heavenly experience. Whenever you get so much than what you deserve, which you feel will give you heavenly experiences, we will also be confronted there with minds which are jealous, minds which hate us, minds which will want us to pull us down. Therefore, this package of a heavenly life is always coupled with the presence of these inflictions over us. And therefore there will be loss of peace, and you would not be able to enjoy a heavenly life as we presume it is as is possible. This is the caution Vedanta attains, and therefore says, don't think you can stick to noble deeds alone and keep prolonging your births as many times. It just doesn't work. And they say, when it comes to scriptural sanctions, which we practice as, say, good practices, which are used as a torch, we should slowly and steadily stop engaging speech with our mind. That's a very important step which they recommend when it comes to the scripture prescribed dualities. Now, when it comes to prohibited dualities, they say it is all out of bondage. And how do you slowly reverse the process? Start observing them. That's one. Instead of participating, start observing. That's one guidance. And second, if you participate, if you get bonded, then you will give your views on it. And therefore, it derives you pain and pleasure. So don't do that. The second objective is, first is don't participate, observe. And second, as an attendant output, when you start observing, then you can be at peace and you can be happy, irrespective of what is happening around you. So this is how this section, chapter 4, comes to a conclusion, dealing with God created dualities and Jiva created dualities. And the sum and substance is, God created dualities, we need to only progress by showing indifference. In Jiva created dualities, that which is positive, which are the do's which we need to do, use it as a torch and stop engaging the speech with your mind. When it comes to prohibited dualities created by the Jiva, they say this comes purely out of bondage and leads to pain and suffering. And if one has to avoid this, one has to become slowly an observer and be happy. Unless we clear these two important steps, namely moving away from prohibited dualities to pursuing only the path of dualities which are prescribed, and not slowly developing indifference to the God created dualities, this leads to a quiet mind, and it forms the basis or the foundation to progress towards Satchidananda. With this, we come to the end of chapter 4. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Chapter 5 contains 8 verses. And Vidyanaranya Maharaj takes 2 verses each to convey briefly the potent of the 4 Mahavakyas. These 4 Mahavakyas represent the 4 Vedas, and they speak only about Brahman. And why are they called the Mahavakyas? If initiated by a guru and contemplated by a Sishya, the Sishya will emancipate, and the guru is capable of making the Sishya reach his own level. That's the potent these Mahavakyas have. But Vidyaranya Maharaj utters a very clear caution that reading it or knowing it, yes, because it is found in the Upanishads, it is accessible. And as a part of study of Vedanta, every learner should try to know it. But the effect would happen only when a guru initiates. And guru will initiate it only when a disciple or a Sishya or an aspirant is deserving. And the moment he initiates it, and the Sishya starts contemplating on it, he would transform into Brahman. It's that powerful. Now, what do these 4 Mahavakyas representing the 4 Vedas convey? Rig Veda sees Brahman or portrays Brahman. In fact, these four the four Mahavakyas have their own features to portray. Rigveda portrays this Mahavakya of Brahman in the nature. It says, it enunciates Brahman as an enunciation principle. When it comes to Yajurveda, it is more in the nature of recapitulation by the disciple. When it comes to Samaveda, it is in the form of a teaching. And when it comes to Atharvana Veda, it is in the form of a conclusion. Now, coming to Rigveda, it perceives it as absolute consciousness. See, all of us get connected to the world and perceive the world through the senses, which is registered in the mind, and the mind processes into activity. But the underlying substratum within us is consciousness. And this is exactly what Rigveda attempts to say. The one consciousness which is in Brahma, Indra, and other devas, and in the human beings, horses, cows, is nothing but Brahman. The consciousness in me is therefore Brahman. Brahman is the universal consciousness, the consciousness that inheres and is perceptible in the individual is certainly also the same Brahman. This is what Rigveda seeks to convey. When it comes to Yajurveda, which is a recapitulation principle, it deals with Brahman as something which is a supreme, unlimited self, and how it gets into the body as a jiva and limits itself. But there is no difference between Jivatma and Paramatma. All of us saw the example of sun rays, mirror, and a dark room. The sun rays reflect on the mirror. Mirror generates light and dispels the darkness in the room. But all of us know that the limitless rays of the sun and the light which limits itself into the room are in fact is a reflection of the rays, but still it is confined or limited. We saw that example a couple of days back. Yajurveda conveys or portrays only this principle. In short, it only says the self, though appearing to be limited as a jiva within ourselves, in our body, is essentially the same as the Supreme Self. Now, coming to Samaveda, because it is in the form of a teaching, it defines everything which is a manifestation or an appearance as that, and the reality as thou, and the identity as art. Tattvamasi, and says, let the identity between them be experienced. This is the interpretation given to the Mahavakya representing the Samaveda. Now, coming to the fourth Atharvana Veda, it perceives or projects Brahman as self-luminous, as luminosity. It says, self-luminosity and immediate perceptibility are the significant of the word this. That which is in the inner than all, beginning with egoism and ending with the body, is called Atma, the soul, which we saw earlier, the tearing the 5 sheets and which creates the cave and finding the jiva present there. It says the real substratum or the substance of all perceptible universe is mentioned by the word Brahman. That Brahman is in the nature of a self-luminous self. So it portrays Brahman as self-luminosity. So this is the brief meaning conveyed through the four Mahavakyas. With this, Vidyaranya Maharaj concludes the first five chapters or the first section of Panchadasi. And he says that one should have an acquaintance and an access and to have brief idea, and therefore this is being incorporated here. It can't take effect unless the Guru initiates. And Guru would initiate the Mahavakya only to a deserving aspirant who has crossed multiple sages, who has traveled the journey towards the self and is in an advanced stage, matured enough to become a Jivan Mukta. So let's see what Acharya has to say through chapter 6 from tomorrow.